Welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're doing something a little different. We're going to be looking at a piece of creative writing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we're not diving into like research papers or anything like that.
Okay.
This is um this is fiction, but even though it's fictional, the story really gets into like the core of what it means to be human. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how being vulnerable, how opening yourself up can lead to some really powerful connections with other people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, fiction, even though it's made up, can sometimes like reflect things that are really true about our lives.
For sure. And that's what we're going to see in this story. And it kind of jumps right into the action. We're introduced to Barron, and he's attending a service at St. Anne's Cathedral.
St. Anne's. Huh. Okay.
Yeah, not exactly where you'd picture him, right? I mean, that already kind of hints at something going on with him internally.
Right, right. He's not like the typical churchgoer.
Yeah, exactly. And we learn that he's drawn to this pastor, Pastor Gabriel, who's known for like these really soulful, powerful sermons. So it seems like Barron is maybe carrying some weight, feeling a bit lost, and he's maybe subconsciously looking for some kind of comfort or solace.
And he finds it in this church.
Well, he finds it in a really unexpected way. So Pastor Gabriel is giving the sermon, and it's all about a struggling sparrow.
A sparrow. Okay.
Yeah, it might seem like a simple, even kind of random topic, but it ends up being this really powerful metaphor.
I can see that. I mean, a little bird,
Yeah.
all alone, trying to survive. Yeah, there's something there.
Exactly. It becomes this metaphor for the pain that we all carry around inside, the stuff we try to hide.
Mhm.
Pastor Gabriel is saying that even when we feel completely forgotten, like nobody sees us or cares, there's always someone watching over us ready to help. And that idea that someone's there for you even when you feel alone, it really hits Barron hard. Like it cracks this facade he's built up.
Wow. So how does that like play out in the story?
There's this really powerful scene where a single tear rolls down Barron's cheek. And it's like this dam breaking. And Pastor Gabriel, almost like he has this like sixth sense, he zeroes in on Barron. He acknowledges that there's this internal struggle going on.
That's intense. And then what?
It's in that moment that the whole idea of vulnerability, of letting your guard down, it just becomes so powerful. Pastor Gabriel says this line, I remember it clearly. You carry a light the world desperately needs, but first you must let go of the pain you've hidden for so long. And it's like that statement, it doesn't just impact Barron, it hits everyone in the congregation.
It's like Barron, by letting his own emotions show, gave everyone else permission to feel more deeply too.
Exactly. Imagine being there surrounded by all this security, but suddenly feeling so emotionally exposed. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think about how we all deal with vulnerability. Do we hide our pain because we're afraid of being judged? Or do we risk opening up, hoping to find connection?
That's what makes this story so relatable. I mean, we've all been there, right? Wanting to connect with someone, but also being terrified of what they might think.
Yeah, totally. It's like that feeling of shame, thinking that if people really knew us, they wouldn't like what they saw. And this story really shows how that shame keeps us from getting the help we need. And it shows how just one act of vulnerability can break down those walls.
And that's just the beginning. What happens next is even more incredible. Like the ripple effect of that one tear, that one moment of vulnerability is huge.
Really? So, like, what happens?
Well, we start to see how the people in the congregation react to Barron's vulnerability. There's a lot of compassion and understanding. And then there's this moment with an elderly woman and her note. But we'll have to save that for next time.
Oh, come on. You can't leave us hanging like that.
Haha, you'll have to wait for the next part of our deep dive to find out more. But trust me, it's worth it. Okay, so we left off with Barron, right? And that really profound moment he had at St. Anne's. That moment when he just let go, allowed himself to be vulnerable in front of everyone. And that opened up something not just for him, but for the people around him, too.
Yeah, it's like his vulnerability was like contagious or something. Remember that note from the elderly woman? You were stronger than you know. It was simple, but it becomes this like seed for something much bigger.
Yeah, it's like that message it sparked something in Barron. Like, what if sharing what he went through could actually help other people who are struggling silently?
Right, and that question leads to action. Barron, now with his new purpose, he decides to share his story. He tells the whole world what happened and adds a simple message. You are not alone.
And the response is incredible. It's like the whole world was waiting to hear this message. People from all walks of life, they connect with it. Social media blows up. And Barron's like drowning in messages from people who finally feel seen and understood. Makes you think, huh,
Yeah,
about how we're all kind of in this together.
absolutely. It shows just how much we all need to connect with each other, especially in a world where so many people feel isolated and like nobody gets them. There's one message that really stood out, though. A stark reminder of how powerful vulnerability can be.
They're talking about the message from Lucas, right? The teenager who was thinking about suicide.
Yeah. Hearing Barron's story, seeing someone he looked up to going through similar things, it gave him hope. It's
Yeah.
like, wow, makes you realize that Barron might have saved a life just by being open about his own struggles.
Heavy stuff, but also really inspiring. So what does Barron do?
He shares Lucas's message, puts it out there for everyone to see, amplifying that message of hope and connection even more. And that's when things really explode. The hashtag you're not alone, it starts trending globally.
Wow, so it's not just a personal story anymore. It's a movement.
Exactly. Celebrities, activists, even politicians, they all start sharing their own stories, their own vulnerabilities, and they're encouraging everyone else to do the same.
Like they're following Barron's lead,
Right.
showing that it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly. And all this vulnerability, it challenges the idea that we have to hide our emotions to be strong.
Hmm.
It shows that strength comes from sharing our experiences and building a sense of community. And that's how we start breaking down the stigma around mental health.
So what about Pastor Gabriel? Does he play a part in all of this?
Oh, absolutely. He sees what's happening, the power of this movement that's emerging. So he organizes a gathering at St. Anne's, creates this safe space where people can share their stories and find support.
So Barron goes back to where it all started.
He does. He's a little hesitant at first, but he feels drawn to it. And it shows how much he's grown. He's willing to step outside his comfort zone for something bigger than himself.
So what happens at this gathering?
It's amazing. People from all backgrounds, they share their stories with such honesty and vulnerability. There was this young mother who talks about losing her job and finding strength in her kids. An older man who spoke about the pain of losing his wife. It was a testament to how different our experiences can be, but how connected we are through our struggles.
Powerful stuff. What about Barron? Does he speak?
He does. He talks about how he spent years hiding his true feelings, thinking that showing emotion made him weak. But now he realizes that being vulnerable is actually a strength, a way to connect with others on a deeper level. And the audience, they just erupt. Applause, tears, the whole deal.
Sounds like a pretty cathartic moment.
It was. For Barron and for everyone who was there, it showed just how much we all need to feel seen and heard to know that we're not alone in our struggles. And this event, it becomes a turning point for the whole hashtag You Are Not Alone movement. The stories shared there inspire even more people to embrace vulnerability and seek connection. Clips of the event, especially Barron's speech, they go viral, spreading that message of hope and solidarity even further.
So this movement, something that started with one man's vulnerability, it's making a real impact.
The huge impact. But it's not just about these grand public displays. The story also focuses on those smaller, more personal connections. Remember Barron's correspondence with Lucas?
Yeah, that was really touching.
It shows that even the simplest acts of kindness can have a huge effect. Just letting someone know you're there for them can make all the difference. And for Barron, staying connected with Lucas is like a source of strength. It reminds him of why he's doing all of this.
Right. And there was that scene with the elderly man who gave Barron his journal, full of personal reflections. That one really got to me.
Yeah, it was powerful. The man wrote something like, "The heaviest burdens aren't meant to be carried alone. When we share them, they become lighter, and we find strength in the people who walk alongside us."
It's like he's saying that being vulnerable isn't about being weak. It's about recognizing that we all need help sometimes.
Exactly. And Barron, he really takes that to heart. He starts to see that his journey isn't just about helping others. It's about letting them help him, too. It's this beautiful back and forth. Vulnerability leads to connection. Connection leads to healing and growth.
Beautiful. So what happens to Barron in the end? Does he become super famous or get into politics or something?
That's what I love about this story. It doesn't go for those typical endings. It's not about what Barron achieves in the world, but how he changes on the inside. There's a scene near the end where he's standing in front of a mirror thinking about how far he's come. The boy who used to feel invisible, who was so afraid to let anyone in, he's become a symbol of hope for so many people.
It's like he finally sees himself, right? Accepts who he is.
Exactly. And in his last message to his followers, he thanks them for being a part of his journey and reminds them that even when things are really dark, we can always find light if we're brave enough to let others in.
What a great way to end part 2. This deep dive is already blowing my mind, but there's one part left. Don't miss it. So we've seen Barron go from this super vulnerable moment at St. Anne's to starting a global movement. It's really amazing how one person's story can touch so many others.
Yeah, it all comes down to being real. You know,
Yeah,
people can tell when someone's being genuine, especially these days when everyone's trying to look perfect online.
totally. Okay, so where does the story go from here? The movement, it doesn't just stay online, right?
No, not at all. It starts to make a real difference in the real world. Like support groups pop up everywhere, schools, offices, even just in neighborhoods. People are finally finding safe places where they can talk about their struggles, their mental health stuff.
Hmm.
It's like Barron opened this door and everyone's like, hey, I want to connect too. I need support too.
It's not just a hashtag anymore. It's like a real force for change.
Exactly. And it's not just, everyday people. We see artists getting inspired, musicians, writers, they're all expressing those feelings, those experiences that people used to be afraid to talk about. That's like shift in the whole culture, you know? People are finally starting to see that mental health is important. It's okay to not be okay.
And it even affects the government, right? Like politicians start taking
Oh,
notice.
yeah. They realize that, hey, people need help with their mental health. So they start making laws, putting resources in place to actually address these issues. It's like this whole movement is going from the personal to the political.
It's pretty amazing to see how Barron's story led to all of this. But Barron himself, he doesn't just disappear, right? He stays involved.
Right. He keeps engaging with the movement. He goes to events, talks to people who need encouragement, makes sure other people's voices are heard. But it's not always these big public things. The story also shows those smaller, more personal moments.
Like when he keeps in touch with Lucas, the teenager who is thinking about suicide. That really stuck with me.
Yeah, me too. It's a reminder that even small acts of kindness can make a huge difference in someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is letting someone know they're not alone. And for Barron, that connection with Lucas, it gives him strength. It reminds him why he started all of this in the first place.
Right, and there's that scene with the elderly man who gives Barron his journal, right? The one that's full of his personal thoughts and experiences.
Yeah, that scene was really powerful. The man wrote something like, I learned that the heaviest burdens are not meant to be carried alone. When we share them, they become lighter, and we find strength in the people who walk beside us.
It's a good reminder that we all need each other, you know? Vulnerability, it's not about being weak. It's about knowing that it's okay to ask for help.
Exactly. And Barron, he realizes that. He understands that it's not just about him helping others, it's about letting them help him too. It's like this beautiful exchange. You open yourself up, you connect with others, and that connection helps you heal and grow.
Beautiful. So, in the end, what happens to Barron? Does he become like a celebrity or a politician?
You know what I like about this story? It doesn't go down that typical path. It's not about Barron becoming famous or powerful. It's about the changes he goes through on the inside. There's this scene near the end where he's looking at himself in the mirror, thinking about how much he's changed. The kid who felt invisible, who was terrified of showing his true self, he's become a source of hope for so many people.
It's like he finally sees his own worth, you know? He accepts who he is.
Yeah, exactly. And in his last message to his followers, he thanks them for joining him on this journey. And he reminds them that even when things are really tough, there's always hope. There's always light, as long as we're willing to let other people into our lives.
It's such a hopeful ending, and it feels really authentic, you know? It's not about achieving something external, but about that internal transformation.
Totally. It shows that real change starts from within. And when we're brave enough to be vulnerable, to connect with others, that's when we can really heal and grow.
Wow, what a deep dive. This story, even though it's fiction, it really makes you think, huh, it shows just how powerful vulnerability can be, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us, even for the world.
I agree. It's like a reminder that we all have stories to tell,
Hmm.
and that those stories can make a real difference. When we share our experiences, when we connect with each other on a deeper level, we can create something truly amazing.
Absolutely. So, to all our listeners out there, what parts of this story resonated with you? What did it make you think about? We encourage you to take some time to reflect on your own experiences with vulnerability and connection. And hey, if you're feeling inspired, share your thoughts with us. We love hearing from you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.